Welcome to Womenpreneur Asia, the podcast that celebrates the journeys and stories of remarkable women entrepreneurs across the region. I'm your host, Krista, and welcome to Season 9. This episode is sponsored by Redbox Studio. Ever since I started my podcast, many business owners have asked me how they too could start their own podcasts. That's why I decided to write an ebook sharing everything that I do in my podcast, including the strategy and technical know-how. If starting a podcast is something you'd like to explore this year, check out my brand new ebook, Podcasting Power, at womenpreneurasia.com. Today we have Harmony T, a funeral director at Harmony Funeral Care in Singapore. She made the bold decision to leave a stable career in accountancy to join her family's funeral business, an industry that is not only unconventional but also emotionally and physically demanding. Harmony shares how she joined the business, giving herself 1 year to test it out, and shares how she got into the news for all the wrong reasons. A disastrous mix-up in cremating the wrong body meant she had a make or break moment, plus shame, bad PR, and embarrassment, leading her to question herself if she should even be in the business at all. From overcoming doubt to navigating a major crisis in a business, Harmony shares how she rose above the turmoil. She talks about the challenges of modernizing the funeral industry, what she's doing to market her business while finding strength to serve grieving families. If you've ever wondered what it takes to be in the death business, which some find quite taboo, particularly in Asia, this episode is for you. Let's get into Harmony's story. Hello Harmony, welcome to Womenpreneur Asia.
Hi, Krista. Thanks for having me here today.
Can you first tell us where are you physically located, and then perhaps give a quick introduction about what business you're in?
I'm physically located in Singapore and I'm in the deaf business. I am a funeral director in Harmony Funeral Care, which is a third generation company. It started off with Hock Hin Undertaker, which was founded by my paternal grandfather when he came to Singapore from China about 60 odd years ago. Right now, because of how things has changed over the years, it has become a business which focuses more on the wholesale of coffins, while on our side at Harmony Funeral Care, we focus on the front line where we help to arrange the funerals and handle the bereaved family members.
So is that business still ongoing?
Yes, the business is still ongoing concurrently. So it's a complementary business. In fact, I think it's like a vertical integration. It works really well together.
What made you come into this industry?
About 7 years ago, I started off after graduating from NUS Business Accountancy. I started off working in Ernst & Young as an auditor. So I was very blessed because I was posted overseas for an engagement, but that also meant time away from my family, especially because the overseas engagement was in the US. About one year after I started working, my dad's kidneys failed. So both of his kidneys failed, and because of that, he actually wanted more time together. At the same time, for my grandfather's funeral company, Hock Hin Undertaker, there was a lack of people in my generation who were keen to take on the role and to learn the ropes. So my father actually suggested for me to enter the industry and to give it a try. Initially, I was quite hesitant because I have spent 4 years of my academic life preparing myself to be an accountant or auditor. And I have taken the most conventional route ever, which is to graduate from university and then to go to the Big Four. However, after much consideration and after speaking to a few of my friends as well, I decided to give myself 1 year to try out the deaf trade. So in that 1 year, I decided to give my best. I quit my job and took a leap of faith to try out the deaf trade. In that 1 year, it was a lot of ups and downs, but here I am after 7 years still in the deaf trade. So I guess I found where I belong. I found my calling, and I found a meaning to a bigger purpose, a meaning to the things, the job that I do on a daily basis. Yeah, so that's how I got into this industry at the start.
Was it a very difficult decision for you to make?
Yes, it was a very tough decision to make because I even had future plans to move into commercial accountancy years later. My mom was not supportive either. She was very worried about the type of people I was going to meet in this industry because it's a very different industry compared to the corporate world where everything is so formal. In the deaf trade, people who are working, people with very little formal education. So to speak to them, to talk to them, we got to enter into their world, which is a pretty interesting one, just different from the formal corporate life. And in the past, now things have of course changed for the better. But in the past, people who are in the deaf trade are usually people who can't find a job elsewhere. So they end up in the deaf industry, and usually some of them might even have a criminal records, or some of them have like vices which are difficult to quit. For example, drinking habits, gambling, smoking, you name it. And my mother was very worried that I would pick up these habits. So she was not exactly fond of the idea of me entering the industry. I also spoke to my friends, some of whom tell me that, because it's a family business, I can always enter this line another time in the future. But looking back, it was actually the right time, because if I had done that any other later than that period of time when I was 23, 24, it would be really tough for me physically, because this job is physically strenuous where death has no timing. You're required to wake up at any time, even in the middle of the night, to attend to a work call. And that can be quite physically challenging for your body. So it's also physically challenging because you have to be physically there for the family members. You have to be at several places within the day. So I would say that if I had done it at a later age, I'm not sure if my body would be able to handle the change. And at a later age, I suppose I would be earning an even higher salary in the commercial
It's going to be more difficult
world.
to quit, right?
Yes, it will be definitely more difficult to quit with all the attachments as well as commitments. Because maybe at a later age, I would have my own family with my children. That with such commitments, it can be a bigger risk for me to undertake to go into a line that I'm entirely not knowledgeable in.
When you went into the industry, did it take some time for you to learn up the ropes of how things work in the funeral services?
Yeah, definitely. When I first entered the industry, I took about 1 year to learn the ins and outs of the entire funeral. No one funeral is the same. Every funeral is different. Every day is different. The role that we are in is so dynamic because the people that we meet is also different. The family members we meet are also different. The way people react to the same situations also differs. So there's just endless things to learn, especially when handling funerals also depends on the religion. So different religions will have different rites and rituals, and to really understand the meaning behind these rites and rituals requires effort to seek to really ask. So for me, I asked the religious leaders as well as the senior staff of the trade why certain things are done a certain way, and I try to also search for such information online to have answers that I needed, which I could then explain to the family members if they needed answers from me. And in that 1 year, I didn't take any off days at all. At times, I even worked like for 24 hours and then I just go home and crash because somehow, when deaths happen, they all happen at the same time, and you just have to.
So it's like a season for that.
Yeah, somehow, I can't exactly point out what the pattern is, but it seems like sometimes, there can be no death case to attend to for 3 to 4 days. So you have a downtime of 3 to 4 days to rest and recuperate. And the next 3 to 4 days can be a hectic for the entire day. And which is also why, even until now, I always tell my staff that whenever it's possible, do take time to rest. And it's a bit different for them because for all of them, they have one rest day, which they are totally off work. For myself, because when I first started out, I was the main point of contact for the bereaved family members. So I had to be 24/7 on call. In this industry, when people need your service, you have to be with them almost immediately. It's like an emergency. They don't like to wait, especially in Singapore, because everything is so fast. You are required to reach the place of death within an hour's time. which can be quite challenging given the traffic conditions at times. So when I first started, it was really quite tough. In fact, I think my health took a toll, that the doctor actually said, usually this condition, it's more common for people above the age of 60 to have this condition, but yet I'm having it. It must be because I have a lack of sleep. Yeah, so that was the price that I had to pay to really learn. Because the thing is, not every day there's a funeral. So whenever there's a funeral, I'll make sure to make myself available to follow the stuff so that I can learn as much as I can and pen down whatever that I've learned to prevent myself from forgetting. Yeah.
Okay. So for those who don't know Mandarin, that whatever that you had is called shingles, right?
Yes, correct. Shingles.
So shingles is when your immunity is really, really compromised. I think that's where you kind of get all these problems. So that is very interesting also, because basically you learn on the job, right?
Yes.
When you were there, were there any interesting moments that when you first was maybe your first year in the job, besides getting shingles? I know that's not the most interesting thing, but what other interesting things that you can recall?
I guess one of the interesting things is that I realized that, when people always ask whether I was afraid to touch a corpse at first. But surprisingly, I wasn't afraid to touch the corpse, but I was just very surprised when we touch the body. The body can be cold and hard, stiff. So that's something that I've only heard of but never really experienced until I joined this industry. Another thing is that, the eyes of someone who has passed away will sometimes be opened. It's a normal process, especially because our muscles relax after death. And what really startled me was that when we look into the eyes of a dead person, it's really like this clear marble stuck in the socket of the person's skull. It's really lifeless and it's quite eerie because it's akin to, supporting the idea that your eyes are the windows to your soul, because really you can't see any soul through the eyes of a person who have passed away. So that was quite startling for me. It was quite a realization also of how your eyes look after death. And in the first year, I guess it was a lot of learning. I learned how to manage the families, how to arrange the funerals for the families. But the most important thing, I guess, was about managing the family's emotions and reminding myself. Even to today, I find it challenging. I got to constantly remind myself not to take things so personally, because at times the family might feel very angry or upset about certain things that might not be related to us. It might be because of the death itself. Sometimes the death can happen at the operation table, and that can be very unexpected for some family members. They might be very angry with the doctors, or they might also suspect if something had gone wrong during the operation. And such frustrations can be projected onto us as funeral directors, people serving in the industry. When we serve the family members, the emotions can be very raw. I used to be very affected by it, but then I realized that it shows more of like how they're feeling at that point in time rather than anything else. And I then realized that it's our job and duty as funeral directors to show compassion and grace during that period of time and to be as understanding. Sometimes we don't need to rebut them or to answer them. We just need to be physically there for them, even though no matter how difficult they are at that point in time.
I know you try to depersonalize it, but when you get home, how do you process that? Even though we say we need to be compassionate, but we're all humans, right? But at the end of the day, there must be some, time for us to process things. So how do you do it as a funeral director?
When I first started, honestly, with the pressures of learning on the job, as well as the pressure from the family, bereaved families, at times I would end up, crying once in a while to release. Sometimes I guess we cry, not like, because there's a big thing going on, but we just need to release the emotions that we have. And it's quite therapeutic also. So I do cry a lot more when I first started. Of course, now I'm so seasoned in this industry, I don't cry as much anymore. But back then it was very, very tough because even working together with my peers in the company was also tough because, it was male dominated and most of them are seniors of a certain age. It was difficult to get them to do certain things, especially if it's
Older,
not.
I guess. It's
Yeah,
older men,
it's
right?
older. Yeah, so it was difficult to get them to do certain things, especially if it's not something they have been doing all along. Because it was always my goal and aim to modernize things, to make things nicer. Funerals used to be such a solemn event, and in the past they were wearing like, I think, white shirt with like pants, but when I entered the industry, I made it a point that they have to wear blazers with ties to make it more presentable on the final day. I mean, the person who died really deserve a proper send off on the final day, and it has been done in Western countries, so I don't see why it should not be done here as well. Everyone deserve a dignified send off, but because it is not the normal industry practice at that point in time, 7 to 8 years ago, it was very difficult to get the older workers to listen to me, and I had to be friends with them, to spend some time to get to know them better, really learn the ropes well, and be competent in what I was doing and gain their respect before they finally followed me. So it was a different type of leadership style. You can't use a top-down approach, but it's really more of a influence leadership style that I was adopting back then. And I guess to also cope with the emotions that I was feeling at that point in time, I also run. I used to exercise a lot, even until now. I do think exercise is very important. For one, it keeps you fit. Secondly, it also releases positive, hormones for you to feel better. And of course, when I need to think about certain things, exercising does help to keep my mind off thinking too much and to just focus on that one thing.
Okay. At least you process it, because there are some people who don't, right? I mean, if you don't process it over long term, it actually is detrimental to your own personal health, because you're taking in so much of the negativity and emotions from other people.
Yeah.
So when we got talking before we even started recording, you surprised me by saying that there are about 300 to 400 funeral service providers in Singapore.
Yes, it's about there. The numbers might have increased already.
Okay,
but
increased.
It's not that difficult to set up a company in Singapore as a funeral company, because most of them are actually suitcase funeral directors, which means that they basically register a company under their own name and brand themselves under that company, but they might not have the needed resources required to run a funeral. They then outsource whatever they need, including the coffins, the manpower, the vehicles, to funeral companies like us to help them to handle the entire funeral. So in a way, they are like middlemen. Yeah, and I guess that happens in other industries as well.
Yeah. But what surprised me was, because Singapore is such a small nation state, right? How do you compete, or how do you stay competitive in the sea of funeral services providers in Singapore?
I think it's important to focus on service. At the end of the day, people want something really personal in a point of time like that. But we are, of course, also trying to keep up with the trend. For one, we use technology. We utilize live stream service, our phones and technology to stream the funeral service, and this was particularly helpful during times of COVID when people were stuck overseas, and when the persons allowed for the funerals were limited as well. Then we also utilize videos that we take with our phones or cameras. So for all our funeral packages, we provide free video montages, which are about 3 to 5 minutes that the family members get to keep as a memory. So a lot of families do appreciate such a gesture, because they get something to hold on to even after the funeral. And like for weddings, people are very particular about capturing those moments. Similarly, funerals are also once in a lifetime, and getting to capture such essential moments is very important. And I guess having such a service for free really is a big bonus for a lot of the customers who do come to us. And the other thing that we do notice is that as time passes, people are getting more and more pragmatic, especially the younger generation. When they do make inquiries with us, it seems like rituals and rites are not as important to them. We try to come up with packages which are also more, pragmatic in that way, which meets their basic needs. So keeping up with the change is very important, because it's always changing. Even the decors In the past, it was a lot more simple. Right now, people have a garden theme where surrounding the entire tentage is a grass carpet as well as a garden. Like there's a landscape, like the entire area is surrounded by
like a
flowers.
garden, right?
Yes, correct. So all these are factors that help to contribute to staying competitive, but also it's about getting our services known online through different platforms. In the past, it was Facebook. Now we still use Facebook, but we do see a shift in the people going from Instagram and then now to TikTok. So our youngest client is 17 years old and he actually found us on TikTok. From what I understand is that TikTok aims to be the next Google, where people are able to search for queries that they have on TikTok. And the answers that are obtained through TikTok can be even more relevant and up to date because people post almost every day. And you even get pictures, videos, captivating videos along with the answers that you want. We try to create content that is informational and educational to the public. For example, we did one that educates people on what a baby funeral is, or how the process is like, or that it's not as uncommon as everyone thinks. And then we also did videos on educating the public on what a Buddhist funeral is or what a Taoist funeral is.
Interesting that you have shifted from, of course you're still on Facebook, right? Facebook,
yes.
Then your Instagram, but now, the crowd is going to TikTok. So basically, even as a business owner, you also have to follow them and start educating them on that platform.
Yes.
Do you have an internal team to help you create this content, these videos?
Yes, we have a team working together, but for some content, I still prefer to be doing it on my own, especially if I have a certain angle that I want to explore.
Okay. And you were talking about just now, you're talking about the packages and all, like garden theme and all that. What is a range of pricing for this kind of different funeral packages that you offer? Is there a range?
Yeah, so for the basic one, usually, of course, Christians, free thinker, and Catholics, they are a lot simpler. So you're looking at a price range of 4,003 and above for hosting it at a void deck. If you're hosting it at a funeral parlor, of course, the price differs depending on which venue you choose. And for a Buddhist funeral, the price range is in the 5,000s. And if you're looking at a Taoist funeral, which is a lot more elaborate and complex and has the priest chanting included as well, you can expect the figure to be about 7,500 for a very basic Taoist funeral. If you want something more elaborate, it can go up to 20,000. And sometimes, people even hire live bands, musicians to come and play on the final day. Yeah, to make the entire funeral even more grand. They even have big-headed dolls, a pair of them usually, to come and sort of prance around and dance around at the wake venue on the final day during the send-off to make the funeral more luxurious as well. So we have had in the past performers on stilts also coming to grace the event, as well as people carrying the big flag. There's a flag. So these are all usually associations who do this, and they are not cheap. They are usually in the thousands of dollars if you do want to hire them. We do see the demand for such services getting lesser with time, but there are still people demanding for such services, especially if it's a Taoist funeral and if the family wants a very traditional style Taoist funeral.
I remember you talked about a really serious crisis that happened to you when you were in this business in the early years, I guess. So that was either a make or break moment, right?
In 2019, unfortunately, during one of the funerals, one of my staff wrongly took a body and cremated the body. Of course, the affected families were very aggrieved. It was quite a complicated matter because our company was not the only company involved. We were handling a Christian family, and by the grace of God, the Christian family was very forgiving and gracious about the entire matter. Of course, they would have hoped that it didn't happen, but they understand that sometimes things happen and since things has really happened, it's also about how we resolve the issue amicably. Whereas on the other side, there was another company, funeral company involved as well, and they were handling a Taoist family. And the Taoist family were a little bit upset because after all, according to certain beliefs, I guess, that they feel that a body should be there for them to grieve properly and mourn, and not having a body would be different, even when the ashes were placed there for them to, have the proper rites and rituals being carried out for the entire funeral wake. And then there was also the embalming room that was being involved as well. So because of the complexities of everything, it was not an easy matter to deal with, and because so many parties were involved. The fact is, in this industry, because of how things are and such errors has happened before and rectified through a private settlement. Even after the incident happened to me, from my own knowledge,
were you shocked? But first of all, from Harmony's perspective, right? Were you shocked that such a thing happened in the first place?
I was shocked that such a thing happened to me, but I wasn't shocked that it happened because it has happened before. Even when I was working there, I've actually witnessed for myself that the wrong body was taken to the wrong wake before, and the funeral director involved had to go and apologize to the family. So I guess it's a matter of time before things the same errors happen again, unless proper protocols, stricter protocols are taken. But at that point in time, there wasn't industry-wide, there wasn't any protocols.
There wasn't an SOP, really right? There was a SOP for that.
Correct. So of course I was very devastated and at a loss at what to do, especially because I had spent so much time and effort on building what I had, and I felt so guilty and ashamed towards both of the families involved. I was only 25, so at that young age, and when something big like that happened, it was considered very juicy news. So it was so sad because a competitor in the same industry actually went to the papers and gave them a tip-off of this incident. And that made the families even more angry because they thought that I was the one who do it. Reporters are being reporters. They only want news that juicy. So the headlines are not particularly like an accurate description of what happened, right? But they just want to make it as readable for people, right? It was very hurtful also because they were camping outside the shop, trying to interview me to understand the situation better, even after I rejected their calls and their requests to interview me several times. Because to me, right, that was not my main focus. My main focus is not to defend myself or tell the reporters something else. My main focus was how to make things better for the family members involved at that point in time, the Taoist family, And so I tried to make amends by going down to the wake, and I tried to do what I can. But I guess it was also something that got me was that I doubted myself, because understandably the families were very upset and angry, and I doubted myself. I then tell myself, is this really what I'm meant to do, or should I just go back into the accounting world and just be an accountant? Because after I have a degree, it wouldn't be hard to find a job in Singapore. But things always have a way of working out, and I guess God always has better plans. I spoke to one of my friend who was in the personal relations media agency. When the news broke out to the main paper, the Straits Times, I was really very scared because I did not know how else to handle anymore. I was really breaking down. I even had thoughts of, just ending things. And at that point in time, there was a moment, like just a moment, I just thought like, if I'm no longer alive, maybe it would make the aggrieved family happier just a little bit for paying for my sins. But thankfully I didn't take that route, and I mean my mom and dad would be devastated, right? But of course when we are all so low in our lives, all sorts of thoughts and negativities will definitely happen. So any one of you who are going through a crisis right now or turmoil, just always remember there are bad days, but bad days don't last just like good days. So it's really, life is a mix of good and bad days, and it's about how you pick yourself up from the bad days that really matter. So after speaking to the lady who was in charge of the media agency, she asked me one very simple question, which is why? Why did you join this trade in the first place? And that got me crying, because she made me realize that when I first entered the trade, I was very clear. I wanted to change things. I wanted to change the industry and make the industry better. And I had a heart for serving the people as well, where I really enjoyed what I was doing because I found meaning in forming real connections with the bereaved family members and in helping them navigate through this difficult time of grief. I really was very comforted also because the family members that I served previously, countless of them reached out to me through text and calls just to make sure that I was okay, even when they didn't need to. So I explained my purpose to the lady, and the lady said, if you are very sure of your purpose, and you know that this is something that God wants you to do, you should just continue. And I told myself, no. I mean, of course, everybody has their own religion. You have your different people will have different gods that they subscribe to. But I told my God, said, okay, if this is really something that you see me being in and a role that you want me to continue to play as a funeral director, please show me some signs. And if I have 7 cases, I chose the number 7 because 7 is a sign for completeness in the Bible. I said if I have 7 cases, then I will continue. And really enough, like during in January,
that particular month.
Yes, in that particular month. And it is difficult to even get 7 cases at that point in time because the news appeared in every major newspaper and on every social media platform. So I'm pretty sure everyone, or maybe it's just my own thoughts that everyone reads the newspaper. But I was thinking like everyone probably knows about the incident and will never ever use me again. I was having all sorts of thoughts, right? So there was no point to continue a business or continue this if no one was coming to me anyway. So I just stayed on for that 1 month. But lo and behold, to my surprise, January really ended with 7 cases. And it was also during this period of time that I met this kind soul who called me and said, "Hi, Harmony, we read the news, we know what has happened. My mom just passed away, and I just want to let you know that we want to use your service because we want to encourage you." And I think my mother would love that. Wow, that was really, I think, God putting 贵人, in my life.
and giving you that pat on the back kind of feeling, right? Like continue doing what you're doing.
Yeah, because it's so out of the world. It's really a normal person in the right mind probably wouldn't do that. But you see, we always see the bad in like every situation, that we forget that even there are always kind souls along the way who will also help us, and we should also strive to be that kind souls to help others as well. I mean, that was of course a takeaway that I had after all these incidents had happened, and I managed to reflect upon my life and myself. That actually, maybe to him, it's just a very normal thing, but to me, it was the whole world to me at that point in time. Yeah. Then the next month onwards, so I continue on because it was really 7 cases, and I tell myself to persevere. And so the next month on, it was okay. So some churches actually stopped using us because of course because of the publicity, but there were also churches who still work with us, who supported us, and I'm very grateful for that because they could have chosen not to. And the next month on, though, something miraculous happened, and that was that the number of funerals that we helped to arrange, right, the people that came to us actually spiked up. So I was very, very surprised. And then I realized what was happening was that, because of the news, the publicity, it has driven the website up because of the search engine optimization. The way that Google works is that, if the news, especially when they are of a high domain authority, when news publications talk about you, naturally the website will go up.
Yeah, because they were all linking to the right?
Yes, that's right. So when family members wanted a funeral service and they searched for certain keywords, like for example, Buddhist funeral or funeral services, our website would come up in the first page, and people would naturally click onto it and then inquire about our service, and we would then go down and help them. And that was really amazing because it was a door of opening in a very gloomy chapter of my life. Of course, it was still not easy because I had to still deal with what was happening, but and I had to deal with the fact that a lot of churches also stopped using us, and Definitely there'll be judgment from some people as well. But with sheer perseverance, I guess, I managed to make it until 7 years. Still not easy, because I guess at times people still look at the news and question me. But it's something I've learned to embrace and say, yeah, it's true that our company did make a mistake like that, and we are terribly sorry about it. But we have actually really done such rigorous changes such that checks are in place to prevent the same thing from happening. And you can be rest assured, since we have additional measures in place on top of the standard industry practice to prevent such things from happening. And we do even more to make sure that the service that we have is better than what you expect. So learning to embrace my shortcomings, my mistakes, my faults as part of my identity was something that I decided to do at that point in time, because actually there were instances where people told me, just change the company name. And
okay.
Yeah, because just changing the company name would be a lot easier, you see, because you can start afresh, you don't have to deal with this negative publicity. But I was thinking to myself, which big company in the world doesn't have a crisis before? Right? You look at SIA, you look at companies like that, even they have crisis where, the recent turbulence they got in the news. Every major company would have a story to tell, and I wanted my company to be one where it's a story where we learn from our mistake and we make sure that we do better. And because of that, we are also gracious to the people that we come across in our paths in life. Yeah, so that was something that I decided to take as upon my shoulders to deal with it. But it's just that, of course, every now and then, sometimes I do wonder if it was the right decision, because people do still ask about the incident. And it's sad
after so many years.
Yeah, surprisingly, they still
they
talk
got good
about
memories.
it. Oh, no, because it's, when you Google, sometimes the news is still there and you can't remove these news, right?
Yeah.
So, but I realize any publicity is still publicity. So it's really how you view it. And in every crisis, in every setback, there's always an opportunity as well. It's how you view it. It's really an attitude of how you perceive and view it. If you are going to be gloomy and sad about it, which I was, to be very honest, for 3 months at least, I was just very sad, thinking like, why this happened to me of all person? Because it was a practice that every company was doing. They were just identifying the corpses with a cloth with the name written on it. And because the cloth got displaced, so the mix-up happened. But now, because we have tags that are tagged to the bodies, which cannot be easily removed, so this thing will not happen again. But to me, it was like, why did it not happen to another company? Or how come it did happen to the company in the past, but they managed to resolve properly? But for me, the news had to break out. It was so many questions running through my mind. But I guess I was the chosen one to.
But I guess there's a message and also a lesson, right, behind all this turmoil,
definitely,
problem, and challenge, right? Yeah, and I guess out of that, after that, you became better, right?
Yes, we became more resilient for sure. But after the incident, actually, the government authorities implemented an industrial-wide protocol, implemented stricter protocols. So it was a good thing, I guess, because even though some people do complain and whine about it, but if you look at it in the long run, it's better for everyone, because it's a preventive measure that prevents such errors from happening to anyone. It's two tags, one that's tagged to the wrist and the other to the ankle. Yeah.
So there's no mix-up possible happening, right?
Of course, human errors do happen. So because now we are so strict, for my company, no mix-up, of course. Even after the incident, from my knowledge, I understand that there are 2 other mix-ups that happened after my incident. And that's because the staff did not follow established protocols, which was already implemented by the authorities. And I guess in such cases, sometimes it's not a matter of whether they want to follow the protocols, but because we have to write on the text like the name of the deceased and details of the deceased, some of these older workers, they're illiterate. They might not even know how to read or write. So it's a challenge for them as well. Yeah.
Are you hiring younger people now in your business?
Yes. All along we've been hiring young people. Youngest was 18 years old, and then she has since left. But in this year, surprisingly, the age group of the people coming to us for jobs are in the 40s to 50s. And that's a very interesting change in dynamics that's happening in our company. This group of people might be less tech savvy, but they have very important traits and values that I appreciate, like hardworking, very respectful, and they are not as entitled because, they grew up in a generation where having a stable income was important, where they can't just job hop any time they want to. So they are bringing in a very different set of values, traits, and skill sets to the company, and I look forward to seeing how this entire collaboration with them will work out in the long run.
So in your case, what do you wish more people know or knew about in terms of this industry?
I feel like sometimes when they see us being on the front line, it may seem easy, maybe glamorous even, because of the way we present ourselves. But there's a lot of hard work behind the scene. Erratic working hours is one, and it's also about dealing with multiple families at once and dealing with families who are not exactly in the best emotional state. There's also the part where, the workers would have to carry the bodies to and fro the different locations and the coffins as well. And sometimes they are not exactly light. So there's a lot of hard work behind making a funeral a good one as a whole. And I hope that, people out there would be more appreciative towards not just us as the frontline workers, like the funeral directors, but also towards the funeral operations staff who might be managing the back end of things to ensure that the funeral runs smoothly. If everyone was a bit more gracious to everyone, then the world would definitely be a kinder place to live in.
Okay, so I think, people don't see a lot of the physicality of the work, right? Okay, I want to come back to one question before we get to the end of this episode, is that just now you talked about baby funerals, which is actually something people don't really talk about, right?
So for baby funerals, they are quite different from adult funerals in that they are a lot simpler. And for baby funerals, there are different categories of a baby funeral. We have babies from 0 weeks to 22 weeks, which will require a doctor memo for the cremation to even happen. And of course, the coffin that is used can be a very small one or even a biodegradable coffin that we do provide. For babies who are above 22 weeks and below 39, they'll get a certificate of stillbirth. And for babies, of course, who has reached full term, they will get a birth certificate first, then a death certificate. So there are different paperwork required, and we will handle that aspect. But the loss that is experienced by the mothers can be quite daunting because a lot of people don't know, but mothers who lose their baby in like the second trimester onwards do have to undergo induction of the birth as well as the normal delivery like any other child, and it can be emotionally and physically strenuous. They have to go through confinement after birth, and they because the wombs will be lowered, and they also have to go through a scenario where potentially your breast might have milk even when you don't have a baby to give the milk to if the baby has passed away. And these emotions that's associated with the death of a baby can be very difficult to unravel because it is not widely shared. A lot of mothers keep this to themselves. They do not share it with their friends and families, maybe because it's not even a life that their friends and families have even gotten to meet yet. It's a very private affair. Usually such funerals are very solemn and private, where only the family members, the mother and father, would attend. Sometimes in Buddhist and Taoist traditions, the mom and dad would not even attend because, 白发不送,黑发不送白发. So they, out of superstition, believe they don't send their baby off.
The elders don't do the send-off, right?
Yeah, so we will handle it for them instead. And then we send them videos and photos that they can look at. But it's, because we recently did a documentary on this, and what the mothers shared is that a loss is still a loss, regardless of whether the baby is less than 22 weeks or a full term or even an adult. A loss is still a loss, and people grieve and cope in different ways, and it can be quite difficult because grief is a process. It's not like, the end of the funeral and I'm done grieving. 1 year on, the mother was still grieving and thinking about the baby every single day. So it's a journey that is different for everyone, and I guess that's why when you do manage to successfully give birth to a healthy baby, it's really something to celebrate and be grateful for.
I felt I wanted to bring that up because I see that usually when we talk about funerals, we always think it's for the elderly, those who are 80, 90 and they've passed on, right? But funerals also for babies or children or the younger ones, right? Who may not probably be talked about in that sense. So that's why I thought that it's good that you actually put that up, and I saw that on your social media. I thought that was something very interesting because that itself
Yes.
also gives, in a way, we acknowledge
Yeah.
that a life was there, and I think that also is something that we all can reflect on, even whether it's adults or babies or kids or whatever. I mean, it's something interesting to reflect on also, because we always believe
Yes.
that death comes to those at the end of their lives.
Yes. You're right. Absolutely. Like, we always think that death actually starts at the end of the life, but actually death could even start before life begins. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very valid, very interesting angle also that you have.
Final takeaway for the
Yes.
person listening to our episode today. What would you say to that person?
I would tell the person to take courage and have hope, even when things seem to be, really bad at any point of time. Don't give up. Just keep going, and things will definitely get better. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because if anyone who's listening to this can think of any major crisis in their life, nothing can be as major as having the wrong body, right?
Yeah.
Having the wrong body swapped and cremated.
Yes.
Yeah. So nothing can top that, I guess, Harmony. I mean, you've got like a major one.
Yeah. It's always a point of consolation where, whenever anything happen now, I'm not as frazzled as the past. I would think to myself that I've handled the worst. I'm sure that I can handle anything else right now. So I'm also thankful and grateful for whatever has happened. There's no point to be bitter about it, because at the end of the day, things has happened, and things happen for a reason. It's only that maybe at that point in time, we might not really know what the reason is, but now I feel like it's because, it was to teach me a lesson to really strengthen my protocols and ensure that as the company expands, because the company is expanding quite fast now, as the company expands, it's important to also look in the internal controls to ensure that all the necessary protocols and procedures are in place to ensure a smooth transition from a small to bigger company. So looking back, it was a great lesson also about, how as a leader I should be more, because I was a very lax leader to my staff also, in the sense that as long as they could get whatever they need to do done, and I try not to micromanage them. But then I realize right now that different staff will require different ways to be managed and to work alongside with. It's a journey of growth lah. Yeah.
Okay, great takeaway, because I think your story would definitely resonate for many people. And if people think that, wow, some mistake they made at work or in their business, I mean, we think about Harmony's story. I mean, there's nothing more crazy than that, right? So thank you for sharing that story, because it also reminds us that, whatever bad things that you think is happening to you right now, whatever horrible tragedy is happening, it will also pass, right?
Yes, correct. It will also pass. So, life is a journey of good and bad days. So if the good days don't last, the bad days wouldn't either. Yeah.
Okay, so finally, where can people find you online?
They can find me on Instagram on Harmony T, or on TikTok. You can find me by typing and searching Harmony Funeral Care Boss. So feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I don't think there are a lot of Harmony T's in the world, so it wouldn't be difficult to search for me. Yeah.
And they can Google you, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so thank you so much, Harmony, for a very enjoyable look and insights into your industry, which is the funeral services industry, which is something I always find very intriguing in it, because in a way it's morbid, but in a way, I guess for the people, I mean, you're in the industry for 7 years, right? I don't think
Yeah.
you think it's morbid anymore, right? I mean, for people outside looking in, they'll be thinking, oh, that's such a morbid industry. Like, how do people actually go to work in the industry every single day? But for you, I guess it's part and parcel of life, right?
I think it's still morbid sometimes, but especially when I'm with my friends who are not in the industry, I have to be quite careful with certain things that I share. I don't want to sound like, a grave digger in front of them. So I would try to make the conversations a lot more light.
Thanks so much for sharing your perspective and sharing what you had undergone in order to become the person that you are today. So thank you so much, Harmony. And that wraps up another insightful episode of Womenpreneur Asia. From stepping away from a corporate career in accountancy to embracing the emotionally and physically demanding world of funeral services, Harmony has shown us that fulfillment and kindness often come from unexpected places. Being optimistic, owning up to problems, and remembering her purpose can turn even the toughest challenges into opportunities for growth and impact. Her story shows us that any business can embrace new approaches, whether it's bringing a professional outlook and pride to funeral services, embracing digital marketing, or navigating a disastrous crisis with integrity. Through it all, Harmony continues to serve with compassion and redefine an industry that many shy away from. It is still a male-dominated industry, but Harmony is slowly trying to change the stereotype that comes with the death business and bringing dignity not just to the deceased, but also to the people who work in the industry. And if you love these conversations, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Share this with a friend who needs some inspiration in business and in life. Let's keep celebrating and supporting women entrepreneurs across Asia. See you next Friday for another incredible story.